Syria's leader says Russia's military intervention has changed the balance of the country's war against Daesh for the better. Bashar al-Assad was speaking from Damascus during an interview with a Czech TV station. He praised Moscow for its support and said the Kremlin is serious about the fight against terrorism. Assad says the war will only end when the West stops helping extremists and criticized the effectiveness of the US-led coalition against Daesh.
If we want to talk about facts, not opinion, since the beginning of that coalition, ISIS has expanded and the recruits from around the world has increased. While since the participation of the Russian in the same fight, so-called against terrorism, ISIS has been shrinking, and al-Nusra, of course, and the other terrorist groups. So this is reality. The facts are telling.
Let's stick with this. Joining me now from Yayladagi, near the Turkish-Syrian border, is TRT World's Andrew Hopkins. Andrew, what do you make of the interview?
Well, Ali Jan, what we're also hearing from this interview is continuing rhetoric, really, first from Russia and now from Syria since the downing of that plane, the Russian plane, about a week ago, about allegations of Turkey's involvement with Daesh, with ISIS, and with other terrorist organizations. In the immediate aftermath of the downing of that plane, the Russian president said that it was like a stab in the back by Turkey and what he called terrorist accomplices. This week, he's made claims that Turkey has been buying oil from Daesh from inside Syria. Now we have the Syrian president, Bashar al-Assad, saying that the reason why Turkey carried out the downing of this plane is because Turkey and other terrorist groups, which he says that the Turkish government is working with, had become frustrated at the course of the war in his country. Now, Turkey denies any involvement with Daesh whatsoever and has been quite firm so far as to why it shot down the plane. It says it has every right to defend its sovereignty, defend its airspace. And we know that in October, on at least 3 occasions, they summoned the Russian ambassador in Ankara to make protests, to complain about Russian violations of airspace. And they told them what they would do if they continue. So Turkey would say that Russia should not be too shocked about what happened.
Yeah, certainly some interesting lines coming out of that interview. Let's look inside of Syria. A ceasefire has been agreed in Homs. What more can you tell us?
Yes, Ali Jan, this is a ceasefire that's come about after more than a year of negotiations between the government in Syria, the opposition fighters, under the supervision of the United Nations. And this applies only to a particular neighborhood in Homs. It doesn't apply to the whole city. And this neighborhood is called Al-Wayr. And this is a neighborhood that's been under siege by the Syrian government for 2 years now. This ceasefire means that this siege will now come to an end, but there are conditions attached. It will allow people to come and go from this area of the city at last over particular crossings, but some opposition fighters will now have to leave the area. But although this is just one small ceasefire agreement in one part of a very large city in Syria, it's interesting to note that the Vienna talks that have been going on for a few months now by world powers to try and bring an end to the war, they want from January the 1st, the Syrian government and the opposition to talk about bringing about a ceasefire in much bigger areas, in wider areas, Syria as a whole perhaps. So this agreement might give them just a little ray of hope that something bigger might be achieved.
Okay, Andrew Hopkins reporting live for us from Yayladagi on the Turkish-Syrian border.